gang member. I was a teenage alcoholic. I was a high school dropout. I was a bad person. Kathy's sister Connie told Kathy that Kathy shouldn't date me. And I found out about that. And though today I agree with Connie that Kathy probably shouldn't have dated me, back then that hurt me. That hurt me a great deal. So as I began to succeed, as I got my GED and got into college, I needed a motivator. And Connie became my motivator. I took a little 5x7 index card and I wrote her name on it. I taped it to the wall directly behind my study desk. And every night as I would study, and I'd have my head down doing my homework and getting ready for the next day's classes, and it became evening and I became tired, and it was time for me to stand up and go to bed or whatever I was going to do. The natural inclination is to raise your head and look at the wall directly in front of you. And every time I did that, I would see Connie's name. And every time I saw Connie's name, it reminded me that she said that Kathy shouldn't date me. And that gave me new incentive to sit back down, turn a few more pages, study one more chapter, spend a little more time doing my homework, because I was going to prove that Connie was wrong. Connie and her negative motivation got me through 4 years of college. 25 years after that happened, Connie found out about it. Forbes magazine did an interview of me in 1997, and they asked me, strangely enough, about motivation. And I told them the story about Connie and the 5x7 index card, and the reason that I graduated from college was because of her. For 25 years, I'd kept that secret, and then finally 28 million people read it in a magazine. Step number 5 is create a promise plan. Now, a promise plan is a term that I've coined, so I don't expect you to understand it. But if we substitute the word goal for promise, then we should think about how we would create the equivalent of a business plan for our promise, ergo promise plan. I've been in business all of my life. I have never seen any business that succeeded for any length of time to any magnitude that didn't have a business plan. So if that's required for a business to succeed, shouldn't we use the same tools, the same building blocks, the same methodology for our own plan? And the answer is, of course, we should. So I encourage all of my students to do that very thing. It isn't enough just to have a goal or a promise. It isn't even enough just to clearly identify it. And it isn't enough to have a personal motivator. Although all of those are good requirements, unless you can clearly write it down, unless you can clearly establish what you want to do, when you want to do it, how you're going to do it, where it's going to happen, who needs to be there to help you. All of the components you would put into a bona fide business plan need to be incorporated into your promise plan. And it can be a 1-pager, it can be a 5-pager, it can be a 10-pager. It makes no difference. It's whatever number of pages is required for you to answer all of the questions. And those are the basic questions. What, where, why, when, who, and how. And when you can answer those questions about your promise, then you have a bona fide promise plan. And when you first try this, it's not going to be very easy, and it's not going to be very pretty. The first couple times you do it, you're going to stumble through it, you're going to run into challenges, you're not going to know all the answers, and you're going to have some blanks. I tell people that's fine. I expect that to happen. You should expect that to happen. But tomorrow when you pick it up, work on it some more. And the next day, work on it some more. And eventually, you end up with a nice, well-written, clearly thought-out business plan for your goal, for your objective, for your promise. Absent that, you'll never be able to see your promise very clearly. Step number 6 is review your plan regularly. Now, that may sound kind of not important or maybe even nonsensical, but just think about it with me just for a moment. The average person spends somewhere close to an hour every day preening themselves. They get up in the morning, they take a shower, they brush their teeth, they spend time combing their hair, they spend time making sure they're wearing the right clothes. Half a dozen times during the course of the day, they will check their appearance. At night, they go through essentially the very same routine. The average person spends more than 60 minutes every single day just making sure they have a good hair day. Why can't we spend 20 minutes a day making sure we have a good life? So if everybody would take 20 minutes out of their day, and they could pick any 20 minutes they choose to, just to sit down and do the previous step, review their promise plan. Look at the where, the why, the when, the how, the who. Look at all of the questions and see if anything new has come to mind. See if anything new has changed since you wrote whatever it is that happens to be on your paper. Just making yourself spend 20 minutes focusing on those simple questions, helping you focus on your goal, makes the goal all that much more attainable, all that much more achievable. Because all of a sudden your brain starts helping you instead of frustrating you. It starts looking at the things you previously have written, and it starts showing you the things you hadn't thought of before. And by showing you what you hadn't thought of before and now adding that onto your promise plan becomes better, it becomes more efficient. And isn't that what we really want to do? And part of that process of spending 20 minutes every day is making sure you keep your eye on the prize, making sure you stay focused on your goal. There have been self-help and success gurus from day one who have always said that. Keep your eye on the prize, stay focused on the goal, and they give us all kinds of little techniques to use. Some people recommend that we stick these little yellow Post-its all over the house. Well, I don't know about you and your house, but I can't get away with that at my house. Other people say, well, why don't you take a 5x7 index card and put it on your shaving mirror? Well, I don't know about you, but my shaving mirror gets kind of foggy in the morning. So I think we need to find new ways. We need to find better ways. We need to find ways that will constantly remind us every day, multiple times during the day, of the very promise we have made ourselves. In order to accomplish that, I've come up with a way that I found works wonderfully. It's called a pocket promise. On the front of it, and it's just a little 2x3 business card sized piece of paper. And on the front of it, the words pocket promise. And I like those two words so much that I had them registered as a trademark. And then on the back of the pocket promise is whatever your promise happens to be. And then you have it laminated. And by having it laminated, it stands the test of time, and it gives it a little bit of rigidity. It doesn't get all dog-eared as you put it in your pocket. And I carry mine with me every single day. And so think about how this works in. In the morning when I get dressed, I reach on my nightstand on my dresser, I grab my keys, my comb, and all the other paraphernalia I'm going to put in my pocket, including my pocket promise. I put it in my pocket. During the course of the day, because I'm an average guy, I put my hand in my pocket a dozen times. And while I'm doing that, I bump into my pocket promise and I feel it, I touch it, and I think about it. And every night when I come home, I then have to take all the stuff out of my pocket so I can hang my clothes up, and I have to put my pocket promise back on the dresser or the nightstand. And by doing that, I've now come in contact over a dozen times during the course of the day with my promise and with the promises written on the back. And by doing that, I am perpetually reminded of what it is I told myself was important. So I never lose sight of it. Because most of us, we think of our goals kind of like New Year's resolutions. They're lofty ambitions that we make on a given day, and we never think about it again until we realize one day we failed at it. By doing this, you are perpetually reminded every single day. Step number 7 is you have to tell yourself that you are, in fact, going to be able to achieve this goal. And some people think that's silly. They think, self-affirmations are voodoo or some kind of mystical or spiritual thing. And they're not. They're much more than that. By telling yourself that you are going to achieve this promise you've made to yourself, by reinforcing it as many ways as you can inside your own subconscious, what you're really doing is just layering one reinforcement on top of another reinforcement on top of another reinforcement. And the more you can convince yourself that you are capable of doing this, the more your subconscious mind begins to assist you with this. And it's not a silly little game. Let me give you a great example that very few people are aware of. Back in 1997, I tried to buy the Chicago Bulls, entered into negotiations to buy the team. In the course of the negotiations, I got to meet many of